Good morning, everybody. Happy Mother's Day from me as well. Also want to recognize any CU graduates. This weekend, CU had graduation, and it's kind of the last time we see some of those students because they either go home or head off to their new life. But we've loved having you here, and we'd love to see you today, even after the service. Come up and say hi, and just give us a chance to congratulate you. We're proud of you guys. Good job. You're just overshadowed because moms win, all right? So you probably got more money than they did, though. But all right, listen to this. Proverbs 18:21. This is one of those verses that just is almost haunting. It's such a challenge, and it's so true. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Our words have power. That's what this verse tells me. Our words have the power to bring about life in its many different forms, but it also has the power and the potential to bring about death and to harm and to hurt people. Gary Chapman, in his book, Love as a Way of Life, and many of you know him because he wrote the love languages, he gives us this metaphor about words. He says they can either be bullets or they can be seeds. Isn't that true? What would happen if we really understood that our words mattered and we stewarded our words more carefully and we watched what we said more closely? What if we could follow our words so that we could watch how they almost take on a life of their own? What if we could see that? What if we could see the power behind our own words? What if we could see how they manifest in someone else's life? What if we could see the consequences of our words, both good and bad? What if we could see the legacy our own words are leaving in other people's lives? This series we're in is called Legacy, and the idea is gracefully moving through life in such a way that life is extended to other generations, and that the things that are good, being a part of God's big story, the things that matter in life are passed down. Words are a key part of leaving a legacy of life, because the truth is we will all leave some form of legacy with our words. Some of us can leave a legacy of life, and some of us can leave a legacy of death. And so today what I want to do is I just want us to reflect on this simple idea that words have power. And we're going to talk about that for a moment, and then I'm going to shift to a couple practical ways that we can use our words to bring about life, okay? But before we get to that positive use, I want to talk about the negative power of words, because few things remind us of the power of words more than someone's negative words that have been spoken over us. Don't we carry them with us? Isn't it hard to forget? I like that psychologists are even coming up with some data that says you have to hear, it's something like 4 times the number of positive things to make up for one negative thing. Many of us know the harmful effects of negative things that have been said to us over the years. You might have heard things like you're not enough of blank, or you're too much of blank, whatever that might be. You might have been called names. You might have been given titles, a wimp, ugly, stupid. Maybe judgments were made over you. You can't be trusted. You're too weak. You're not as pretty as she is. These types of things are things that we carry with us, and they kind of imprint on our soul. This week, my son Wyatt shared something with me. It was some negative statements that had been said about some celebrity. So I want to read a few of them to you, and you just guess who they might be, okay? So this individual was told by a teacher during elementary school that he was too stupid to learn anything. Any guess? That's Thomas Edison. Also told by a teacher in elementary school that he'll never amount to much, and he was labeled mentally slow. And he heard that title often. That's Albert Einstein. Told by a movie producer that she wasn't pretty or talented enough to be an actress. It was Marilyn Monroe. Told by his basketball coach at his tryout that he lacked skill. That was Michael Jordan. Stupid coach. Told by a music producer that their sound wasn't relevant, that they didn't like their sound, and that there wasn't room for them in the music industry. That was the Beatles. And told by the newspaper when he was fired that he lacked imagination and had no original ideas. That was Walt Disney. The reason we have record of that is because those people never, ever forgot it, right? Because there's power in negative words. There's a quote I like about words. Words are like eggs dropped from high heights. You can no longer call them back, then ignore the mess that they leave when they fall. Because we dwell on other people's words, words leave a legacy. They live on. They really matter. And we have to just kind of face this part of life that other people's negative words are living inside of us. But here's the thing I want us to think about. Not only are we victims of negative words, but we ourselves are often the ones that are hurting people, right? We use our words as bullets. I was made well aware of this during college. I went home one summer to work for my dad. And often my dad he had his store in the small town that we grew up in, and so he would often hire some of our old friends or old classmates. And when you grow up in a little town, you go to elementary school, middle school, and high school all with the same people. There's no options. There's no different schools. You're just all together the whole time for 12 or 13 years. And my dad had hired a young lady named Lala. That was her nickname that we called her. And she was just a great employee. She was fun to be with. I was so glad to come back and have someone enjoyable to get to work with. And as we spent time working together, we started building a relationship. And as she felt more comfortable with me, she one day shared something that really made me feel ashamed. She said, Brian, you're very different now, but when we were kids, you used to say terrible things to me. Now, remember, we went back to like kindergarten together. And I said, well, really, what did I used to say? I had no memory of this. And she said, you used to call me fat all the time. And you used to call me ugly all the time. And I've never, ever forgot that. And so I'm standing in the middle of my dad's store with a young girl who I know that those are about the harshest things you can say to a young girl. I know that at this point. And she's saying, these are the things I used to say to her repeatedly over and over again. And I had nothing to say. I felt completely ashamed, really in a good way. It was godly sorrow. I was sad for what I had done, and I just apologized and said, I'll do my best to never, ever make you feel that way again. But she reminded me that words stay with people, don't they? James chapter 3. I think James is doing what pastors do. He's taking a passage and he's kind of building on it. I think James is referring to the Proverbs that we just read, and this is how he describes the power of words. He says, consider when a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. James is channeling his southern sermon right there, a few thousand years before. He goes on in verse 9, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Words can be like bullets. They can be like a fire, great potential to harm and even lead to death, but they can also be great seeds of life. They can be gifts. They can have potential for blessing and lead to life. Words are a great challenge. I'll be the first to admit today that I have a problem with my words. I have this interesting relationship with the things I say because I've learned, and I have the gifts of encouraging and using words to help people and to make them feel cared for, and I often do that. But I also have this other side of me when it comes to words, and I'm a very dangerous person. And that's really not an exaggeration. I say things to people, and the people I usually say these things to are those that are closest to me and most dear to me, okay? So our poor staff, my poor family. But I say terrible things to them, and I often also say terrible things about other people to them, which I've been told is called gossip. In my mind, it's just verbal processing, but I've been told it's gossip. But I say terrible things all the time. I'm dangerous with my words. And I know full well, it seems like I should have learned the lesson that day that Lala gave me the gift of helping me see how my words had a legacy to be more careful. And so I'll be the first to raise my hand to say this is a struggle. But today it's really practical. It's just a simple challenge for us to steward our words a little better. And so I am committing to be more careful, to change and to grow and to learn to deal with my anger and my stress in a different way, because those are the things that trigger my bullets. my deadly words. We all have things. Sometimes when you're afraid or you feel insecure, those things can come out. For me, it's anger and stress. And when that's happening, boy, oh boy, I can let people have it in a terrible way. Now, I say all that, not just to get us dwelling about maybe the things we've said to other people or the things people have said to us, but the idea today is to know that our words are powerful, and we want to shift now, and we want to think about how can we use our words in a positive way that leads to life. Because just as powerful as words are to harm people, they are equally powerful to heal people or to bless people or to take care of them. Mark Twain said, "I can live for 2 months on a good compliment." Isn't that true? It's true for me. And aren't mothers really the best example of people who can use their words really, really well? I mean, not only do moms care for their kids' physical needs, but they care for them emotionally and spiritually, and they say wonderful things to their kids. And they whisper in their ears, and they affirm them, and they love them, and the kids know that they are safe. Much to do because of the things that a mother has said to their kids. Mothers are a great example. I hope everyone in this room has something they can cherish that they heard from their mother or someone who stood in the place of a mother to affirm them. Words have life. So let's talk about that. The words of life. And this really starts with God. God speaks the words of life over us and into this world. As image bearers of God, and as the only living creatures that are made in his likeness, we are distinguished from all other creation in some regards because we are able to use our words to convey meaning. So, of course, other animals can communicate with one another, but we are the only thing in all of creation that God has put this part of him inside. And that part is that we can use words to express our personality. We can use our words to express values and love and passion. We can use words to express sadness and anger. No one else in all of creation has this but men and women. It's a great gift that God had given us. God trusts us with something as powerful as words. And look how powerful they are. Think back to the beginning when God was creating. Genesis chapter 1. One day after another, God creates. But what was it that always preceded life popping forth, or the light and the dark from being separated from one another, or the earth and the seas? What was it that preceded it? It was God speaking. And so if you read Genesis 1, it's almost given to us as a poem, and you see this phrase repeated over and over again. In fact, 8 times it says, "Then God said." God didn't think it, God said it. And his words expressed his intention and his meaning, and the power of creation was found in the word of God, the voice of God, the speaking of God. Verse 26 in chapter 1, "Then God said," one of the last times he says it, "Let us make man and woman in our image and in our likeness." And then in verse 28, he gives us our instructions. So God blessed them, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." And he goes on to say, you should do these other things. We were spoken into being. We were given our purpose and direction and identity because of the things that God said. That's why thousands of years later, the great writer of Hebrews said in chapter 11, verse 3, "By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command." There is power in words to bring about life. There's a figurative garden inside of you that you can speak into existence in people's lives. Did you know that? It's not the physical garden that we walk and talk in, but it is a setting that people are meant to thrive in. Your words, my words, have power. Eugene Peterson, one of my favorite pastors, says this: "The human voice is the most engaging sound in the world." Says other things like it's the most powerful sound in the world because it connects to the heart and the mind. God transfers to us some of his authority and his power. He did it to Adam, he did it to Eve, and he's done it to every one of us. He's saying, "I'm trusting you enough with the things that can bring about life, and those are your words." In chapter 2, Adam began to use this. So God says, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop speaking and just making things happen. I'm going to let you do it. So chapter 2, verse 19, he says to Adam, "You can name the animals." So he spoke their name. He called them by their name. And he named each one of them. You see it in verse 20. God gave him the authority to use his words to convey meaning and purpose and value and identity. Our words, like Adam's words, are meant to bring life, to pass blessing, to bring about healing and care, to convey love and meaning, to speak identity and value into people. Words of life. Now, words of life should not be mistaken with words of flattery, okay? The book of Proverbs warns us about just empty speech, and so you can see one of the many verses behind me, verse 5. Flattery is not good for anyone. It is not true. And in a culture that is very superficial and just concerned about the way people perceive us, flattery is not hard to find today. But words of life are different. And I'm going to give you a couple examples how words of life are different than flattery. The first is that words can be life if we use them to bless. And second is if we use them as words of healing. So let's go through these two meaningful ways to bring life to the people in your life. By the way, I want you to be thinking about the people in your life that you are closest to, okay? I want you to think about the people that God has put into your life, whether it was your choice or not. These are the people that God is calling you to bless with your word. So I just want you to keep them in mind. Picture them in your head as I go through these things, okay? So number one here is blessing, the idea of blessing. At its core, a blessing spoken to someone is an affirmation of something that is true or something that will be true of that person. Okay, so you can be calling out something that is presently beautiful inside of someone, or you can bless them with a beautiful future. And when we bless people by saying, this is what I see in you, this is where God is leading you, this is who I see you becoming, guess what happens? We give them a picture of a person to walk in, okay? It's like the shadow that goes before the person that they can follow. Blessing another person is about identifying what is there in them that is present, that is good, that is beautiful, the potential, the virtue inside a person, but it's also calling those things out into the future. If you think back into your own life, you probably treasure the times that someone affirmed something that was true of you in the moment, but you probably also treasure and find yourself, or you can look back and say, I found myself living within the blessing that someone gave me about my own future. So someone might say, I see you doing this. I see you being very brave in this moment. And you look back and you say, that was such a gift because I was able to walk within that blessing. Learning to bless others is an important part of both the Jewish and Christian tradition. That's why when you read the scriptures, there's this blessing being given to people all the time, the affirmation. So I asked you a moment ago just to think about the people in your life. Now, as you think about them, I just want you to be aware of this. They are just like you. They're just like me. And they are also dealing with negative thoughts, negative beliefs because of negative things that have been said to them. They're dealing with the bullets, right? They're dealing with their own negative thoughts. Did you know that we can process our thoughts twice as fast as we can listen? And we can listen 3 times as fast as we can speak? So a lot of times our own worst enemy is the thoughts that are in our head. So we have people in our lives that we care about, and they're constantly dealing with thoughts that make them feel small and insecure and pointless, and they're dealing with thoughts of shame all the time. Now, if they are not blessed by the people that are closest to them, who will do it? If we hold back learning to bless the good that we see in people or the potential that we see in them, and even those that are closest to us, they will be left to only be formed by their negative thoughts or the negative thoughts of other people. There should be a steady dose of blessing that takes place in healthy relationships. There should be a steady dose of blessing moving in every direction within a family, affirming one another, calling out the best in one another all the time, because what we can count on is that the negative thoughts, they never rest, right? And the world is full of messages that tell us how we don't measure up. So blessing should start with those that are closest to us. Gary Chapman, in a book about children, says, such words are like gentle, warm rain falling on the soul. They nurture the child's inner sense of worth and security, and even though such words are quickly said, they are not quickly forgotten. A child reaps the benefits of blessing for a lifetime. So we bless our kids. You can bless your wife or your husband. You can bless your friends. You can also learn to bless your parents. And I want to tell this story because it's Mother's Day. About 15 years ago, my mom and dad were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and my brothers and I, as a gift, wrote them a tribute. And a tribute is basically a blessing. It's just thanking them for all the things that they've done, thanking them for who they are, and just affirming their sacrifice for us. And so we wrote a paragraph together, and then each one of us, the three of us, wrote our own paragraph and a message to our mom and our dad. And I want to read to you what I wrote my mom, and because in there is even a blessing that she shared with me years before. There are so many reasons, Mom, why I'm grateful for you. You were always there to love and encourage my brothers and I. Thank you for dragging us to church every week. Thank you for sharing your greatest passion with us, which is Jesus. Thank you for loving my dad and staying committed to him and to our family. Thank you for always knowing what to say and when to say it. I will always remember the note that you gave me after losing in the state semifinals, because everything goes back to wrestling, right? Even these meaningful moments. I will always remember the note you gave me after losing in the semifinals at the state wrestling tournament. In fact, I still carry the note with me today in my wallet. I wanted to remind you of some of the words that you shared with me that day. So at the time, I'm a 16-year-old who thinks life is good because the year before I had won a state championship. And now I lose. And I blow a 5-point lead with 20 seconds and lose in overtime. But I'm over it. And it was devastating for me, okay? But this is what she wrote me, and I share in the note. It's in her tribute. Brian, you were at that moment, and this is what she's talking about. So in the moment that I lost, I was told that I graciously got up, shake the other guy's hand, congratulated him and his coach, and walked off the mat without throwing a fit, which had always been a hard thing for me when I had lost. And so this is what she said. Brian, you were at that moment and continued to be a young man of remarkable integrity. Please remember always, as I go about the business of being your mother, that I have to get on you from time to time, but I am your greatest admirer. I loved you before you were born, and I have the privilege of being your mother today and seeing the very best in you, which is what I saw on Saturday. So let me ask you a question. For a 16-year-old boy who's devastated from a loss, who's tempted to think that winning matters most, after receiving a note like that from his mom, don't you think that she was able to bless me and call out something more important than just winning? Things like character, and to praise integrity, and the idea that there's more to life? Do you see how blessing works? In the midst of pain, she saw something beautiful and called out more of it. I kept that note in my wallet for about a decade because words have power. It's only not there now because I washed it in the laundry and it got ruined. That was a sad day. But let me show you a picture of my mom's tribute. You can see it behind me. Guess where mom and dad's tribute sits, and it has for 15 years. It's the centerpiece on the end table next to their bed. So my dad has his on his side, and my mom has hers on her side. And it's the first thing they see in the morning and the last thing they see when they go to bed. Why? Because words have power, right? There are many ways to bless people. You can use Scripture. I'll share a few of those. Scripture helps people step into something that's true or could be true about them. So think about 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For people who are dealing with fear, you can bless them with this message. For God gave us a spirit of, not of fear, but of